The Crotchety Old Men podcast is not a registered investment, legal, or tax advisor or a broker-dealer. All investment financial opinions expressed by or on the Crotchety Old Men podcast are from the personal research and experience of the owner of the site and are intended as educational material. Although best efforts are made to ensure that all information is accurate and up to date, occasionally unintended errors and misprints may occur. Before you invest or make any investment-based decisions, consider your own personal circumstances. You should do your own research and seek advice from a financial professional.
It's another great day in the house of the Crotchety Old Men podcast. Hi, this is Gary Smith. I'm one of the hosts here today, and I want to welcome you all to another episode of the Crotchety Old Men. Joining me in the studio this day is none other than my main man, partner in crime, Paul P.C. Clemens. What up, Doe PC?
Hey, what up, Doe? It's a great day in the neighborhood.
Better know it.
Good to be with you, brothers, on such a sunny, beautiful day. And that's all I got.
Well, for those who don't know, when we say "what up, Doe," that's a Detroit thing. So, just let them
Absolutely.
know where it originated from. Speaking of Detroit, we'd be remiss if we didn't get our other partner up in here, George Crumley. What up, George? What up, Doe?
What up, Doe? What up, Doe?
Yeah, baby.
Detroit in the house.
Hey, man, Detroit is well represented today. Look here, fellas. This probably will be our last episode for 2022, isn't it? Or what's up? We got anything else coming after this one?
No, I think this should do it. It's been a great year, Smitty and PC. We've done over 50 episodes, and I think we've brought a lot of good information to our listening audience, anywhere from what to do with your money at the beginning stages of working to how to budget, what to look for investments. We've talked about REITs. We've talked about cryptocurrency. And then on the health side, we've talked about everything from different types of cancer. We did a recent episode on sleeping. So, we're just trying to educate our audience and inform them and expose them to a lot of these things that a lot of people take for granted. But here at the Crotchety Old Man podcast, if you hit the subscribe button, you'll get this stuff on a regular basis, and it won't be any surprise to you at all, because we're going to keep talking about this into 2023.
Oh, absolutely. Over the holiday season, make sure you talk us up, because 2023, y'all, is going to be a blast. I'm telling you. We're prepared. We're excited about it. And we look forward to just sharing the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that collectively we've gained and had privilege of applying. We're not just sitting back talking theory, y'all. We're talking about things that we have done, seen, and experienced, and have the results to prove it. What do you say, PC? Want to get this thing kicking off here?
Absolutely. So as a result of things, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the advantages of buying real estate, and that is residential real estate this time.
Yeah.
So Gary, why don't you start us off, man?
Yeah, well, as we are, when you're thinking about investing, and we have to think about a lot of times what's most accessible to us. And for a lot of people out there that have the aspiration to invest in real estate, what's accessible to you, or what you know most about, is single tenant or single family residential real estate. What short story of that is your house, okay? And most of us have either brought up in one or we've been to one, so we kind of understand the workings of houses. And so today, what we're going to do is talk about pros and cons of whether you're going to be a fix and hold investor, whereby meaning that you're going to rent the property out to a tenant, or there's other opportunities in the single family residential investment sector, whereby you could buy property with the intentions of flipping it, as we say, to another buyer, what have you. And so no person that had the experience and the expertise that I can think of out here today in this panel would be George Crumley, that can share his wisdom, experience, and knowledge about the do's and don'ts of single family residential. George?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing because one of the things that we always talk about is diversification. We just recently did a podcast and we talked about different forms of investing. We talked about how to diversify your portfolio. We talked about the importance of that and having a mixed bag of different types of investments. We touched upon real estate, but I thought we'd come back in this episode and talk a little bit more in depth about it because of the fact that, when you have something tangible, it makes a big difference. And I think in the rental real estate market, you have that tangible thing, which is something you can hold, you can see. And I think that it'll hold its value, and it's proven over time to do those types of things. It allows you to catapult to other things larger. You can go from single family to multifamily to duplexes to quadplexes to apartment buildings. Just how you set your sights. But here again, as we talk about this, it's all about getting started. But once you get started in this direction, like I said, you don't have to put all your money into that, but it's something that we really need to look at because it's something that once you own, you no one can take it away from you. You get good renters in there, you get a good monthly base coming in every month, and it's going to help you with all the other endeavors that you're trying to take upon. But it's something that you really seriously need to look at. I think home ownership from a rental perspective is something that everybody needs to seriously look at. If you don't have but one, it balances your taxes because you get all the write-offs. It allows you to expand, take a second out, or take an equity loan and go and invest in something else. But there's so many different avenues that you can look at when you get into residential property and renting it out. As Gary had talked about, there's a couple different aspects that you can look at it. You can buy the property, rehab it, and then you can rent it out for that monthly income, or you can buy it, rehab it, and you can try to flip it. So, let's talk about first getting the rental property and holding it and getting the rental income and what some of the benefits of that. Because I know you've seen some of the benefits over the years on that, right, Smitty?
Yeah, and when we think in terms of buying or investing, I should say, in single family houses, I think it's wise to start with a strategy. Number one, why? Why is that you want to get into real estate to begin with? Okay, because real estate is a business. And if you're going to get into the real estate investment business, then you need to have the mindset of a business. So why? What's your goal in doing it? Is your goal financial freedom? Is your goal an extra monthly income, or is your goal to pass creating generational wealth? So if I was going to begin down this path, the first thing I would do is spell out what's my strategy for getting involved in this anyway. The most riskiest thing, so that would be number one. Number two, what results am I expecting? Is it going to take me, like Georgia said, if I want to have, let's say, for instance, just an extra $500 a month, and I net $100 per house? Do I need to buy 5 houses or what have you? So you want to know what your results are. When do you expect that? How long am I planning on holding these properties, particularly if you're buying to flip them? We're going to get more into those specifics. So as we go down that path of selecting properties and PC property, you can help us with that as well, man. Is that what do you look for? Where do you look to find properties at? I mean, how do you go about that? Once we identify what our why is and the type of money we want to make, where's the first step toward finding a property?
One thing, Smitty, as you said, you have to have a strategy, and you what you want to. There's a lot of different avenues available to you right now. One of the hot things is the Airbnbs, which allows you to rent out your house on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, which wasn't available to us, years ago when we got into the real estate market. And I think this has kind of opened it up, where it's given a different dimension. So when you say, where do I look for property? You want to look, it's always been the adage is obviously the closer the better. You want to buy a piece of property that you can get to on a quick basis. But that's kind of changed a little bit with the Airbnb because of technology and whatnot. So as you live in Detroit, you could buy a house in Florida near the beach because of the fact that it's going to be in an area where it's going to be demand. And if there's a demand for the property to rent it out, and people go on vacations and whatnot, you can benefit for that. You can get a management. They have companies out there that will actually manage it for you. So it's kind of a turnkey approach. So that where you buy the property or where you look for the property has changed somewhat over the years, and here most recently because of the Airbnb philosophy. Like I said, back in our days, you want to buy something in the neighborhood, you want to buy something that's close by, something you can get to quickly, so you can make sure you keep your tenants under your eye. You can make sure you attack repairs real quickly. But I think it's changed a little bit, and I think it's kind of opened it up a little bit. I don't know. What do you think, Paul? You got anything to add to that?
Actually, I do. As a matter of fact, since we've had the pandemic, people who've been living in apartments have had an exceptional amount of raising in their rent. And when you buy a single family home, like you were suggesting, George, even if you own a single family home, this Airbnb situation allows you to make money on that home as long as you have some place to go when people want to rent your home out. And I think it's a good way for people that only have one house to be able to turn their house into money.
That's an interesting fact that you make about, as far as, when you said the pandemic, a lot of things have changed as far as who's investing in single family residence. And I'm sure Gary's going to probably jump all over this, but what you have is you have your banks. I was reading an article the other day how Wells Fargo is now targeting to buy a certain number of single family residents so they can turn them exclusively into rentals, because they see where the market is going, where a lot of young folks, where it's to be the goal is say, get a job, buy a house, that's your security. Well, a lot of young folks are saying, well, I don't necessarily want to own a house, I'm okay with renting. So now these banks are kind of getting a whiff of that, and they're basically buying a lot of these single family residents, and they're renting them out, for certain purpose. They're creating REITs with them. So they're doing a lot of different things where they're changing their investment strategy. But if you think about it, if they start to control the amount of houses that are out there, it's going to hurt the overall buying market for houses because
And
there's
that's
not
what
going to
they've
be.
done. That's what they've
Mhm.
done. As a matter of fact, as we look at the market today, there are no houses on the market to rent or almost buy. And I guess the renting is one thing and the buying is another, because now, you know, for a while the houses were, it was a seller's market, and as a result of this inflation, they so-called inflation, as they say, um, it's starting to bring the cost of buying a house down. But as far as renting a house, there have been no rentals. I mean, available to rent. So Wells Fargo, these banks, these I forget what you call them, Gary, but people from Canada and whatever come in and they'll buy a lot of 10 or 15, even 100 houses, and as a result, there are no houses in your particular market. So that Airbnb situation is a great way to turn your house into an investment property.
That's one to consider. But again, going back with strategy, your goals, reasons, and whys, if I contrast that with an investor, like for myself, I would be more toward leaning, if I was going to get back into single family residence investments, it would be more of a flip situation than I would as far as the perceived long-term cash flow or continuous cash flow. And here's where I'm going with that. Just using simple numbers. You don't even need a calculator for this. So hopefully somebody's out there that's listening to us. Grab your pen and grab your notebook. I'm going to walk you through some real simplistic ways of looking for property. One is that we all know that the housing market has really been detrimental to those, particularly those with affordable housing in the lower end. On the higher end side, They're able to get financing, etc. Most people on the higher end side, they have the income, the capacity in which to to handle the increase in rents. On the lower end, when I say lower end, I'm talking about the Class C properties, where you're talking about service-oriented tenants who everyday working people. So let's say, for instance, there's a neighborhood where the value of the house is $100,000. And so any not private, but any investor in a single family home, you always want to buy the property under market value, obviously. You want to buy in a good neighborhood, maybe the poor house, but in a good neighborhood. And typically you can find those type of properties for anywhere from 35, 40, maybe 50 cents on a dollar. Let's take this very brief scenario here, and I'm not going to bore you, but y'all know I love numbers. $100,000 value after the repair value. You buy it for $40,000. The house needs $25,000 of repairs. So your total cost is $65,000. Now, hopefully, as an investor, you should have at least some of that $65,000. Okay, well, it's 10 grand or 15 or what have you. The rest of that, let's say, for instance, just to keep my numbers simple again, you find whether it's a hard money lender, because the bank is not going to give you the money, or you go to a policy, but let's use a hard money lender. $65,000, 10% interest. Now, a lot of people think, oh, that's a whole lot of money. But here's where I'm going with that. You want to be able to get the deal quickly. So access to money is more important than the cost of it. Because here's where we're going. If the people charge you 10%, that's $6,500. 5 points, that's half of that. That's $3,250. And plus the cost of your docs is $250. So you add that comes to $10,000. So your cost is $10,000, and you add that to the $65,000. So you really are not into a whole lot of leverage here. That's $75,000. You take that and you sell that house for that $100,000. You got to pay a real estate broker possibly 5%. That's $5,000. So it leaves you with $95,000. You have $75,000 that you cost. When you subtract $75,000 from $95,000, that leaves you with a profit of $20,000. If your goal is to generate $100,000 a year, this is the way to do it. You buy a house every quarter, and you're able to do this 4 or 5 times. There's your $80,000 to $100,000 of annual income, basically using other people's money. All you got to do is do it once, because once you got that 80,000 or that difference, that 20 grand, now you're playing with other people's money. So the next time you do the same model, the same exact house, the same exact dynamics, there's your formula. So it's critically important that we have a formula of how I'm going to make this happen. And then you replicate that over and over and over and over and over again until you master that. I think that is, if I was going to get back into investing in single family houses, that would be the way to go as we look at today's market, because $100,000 at that lower end, and even at 7% interest, there's a work male lady, a male person, or electrician, or teacher, or whatever, that can afford a house like that. Just an idea, okay?
Yeah, I mean, Gary, those are some very good points, and my audience should really look closely at that, because that's definitely a way to crack the market, get into the market, and especially if you're handy and you can do a lot of the work yourselves. It's a good way to like I said, get in the market, get into investing. And one of the things that you didn't hit upon, which goes along with it, is the tax side of that, because a lot of that you get to write off. And anytime you can write off anything from paying taxes, that's because that's our motto: pay as least taxes and pay as no interest. Anytime we want to get into that model, anytime you have a write off, that allows you to do that. So getting into the real estate, whether it's flipping or renting, it's going to give you that model where you can take advantage of the tax implications of that type of investment. And that's pretty much how the tax code was developed for those that invest in things like that, it gives you the ability to write them off on a yearly basis. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a great solution, and our listeners really need to listen at that and take heed to it if they're financially in a position to do that.
I've got a question, gentlemen. George, you mentioned an interesting point, and you were saying that if you do the work yourself to rehab your investment, but what if you don't? Then what are your options in a situation like that?
Well, I can answer that one real easy. Like I just did an illustration. There's private money out here. Whether it's private money lenders, hard money lenders, they're all the same, you know. And sometimes people have a miseducation about that source of capital. It's always about access. Access to capital equals access to opportunities. As I just illustrated, there's a way that you can use somebody else's money. Okay, sure, there's a cost of money. It's just like that. You can have $1 million. There's still going to be a cost, to closing the transaction. So that's just what you would consider opportunity costs. But here's what I just said. It's going to cost you $40,000 to buy the property. You get another 25 to repair it. Heck, I use $65,000 as my example. That's actually 100% financing if you really think about it. Okay, that's 100% financing that you can use. 65 grand right there. So it costs you 75 because, just as I mentioned, the cost of borrowing the money. So it's only 10, 15%. But it gave you access to a property. It gave you access to an opportunity to make $20,000. And I'm going to say tax deferred. I won't say tax free. But like George said, there's a lot of that that's going to be wiped out. Plus, here's what you're going to do with it. You're going to do what? Wash, rinse, and repeat. Matter of fact, you don't even have to borrow as much money the next time if you don't want to. Go buy 2 more houses and do the same daggone thing. Take 10,000 of this 20 and buy another house, and take another 10,000 and buy another house and do the same thing and put it on steroids. This is not rocket science, y'all. Banks are not going to give you the money. Now, what banks will do, now that you have an asset that you created some value in, you put 40, 65 in, and now this bad boy is worth 100,000. Banks will give you a refinance. Why? Because they have collateral. So now you can go refinance. You got several ways out of this puppy. You go refinance the deal, and shucks, you can pay the hard money lender off and make you some more money. Now you got a low note. Put a tenant in if that's what you want to
Tell
do.
me the difference, Gary, between refinance and a home equity line of credit doing the same thing.
Well, to my knowledge, the home line equity credit, whatever you call it, is you only pay as you use it. Okay, versus if you refinance, cash out refinance means just what I said. All right, banks will probably give you 75 or 80% loan to value. Well, you got $100,000 here. If they're going to give you 80% loan to value, that's 80 grand. All right, if you put $65,000 into the property, well, heck, you take that 65 out, you just made an extra $15,000 tax free because that's a loan. You follow me? That's a
Got it.
loan. And
Got it.
that's the wealthy. And this is what we're going to be bringing y'all next year in 2023. The wealthy use debt. And we've been misled about debt. And I don't want to get really into it now because we're talking about investments. But next year, y'all, we're going to really bring it. Debt is good. There's good debt and there's bad debt. And trust and believe, more money is made on debt than, believe it or not, that it is on equity. We'll talk about that in another episode. George?
Yeah, actually, that's what I was going to touch upon, was the fact that if you take anything away from this conversation, it's to get started. Because see, one thing is, if you're buying a rental piece of property, or even if you're looking at buying your own property to live in, people get hung up on the fact that it's not obtainable, because they'll look at the interest rate, they'll look at closing costs. I don't have down payment. But when you really get into it, it's easier to get in than you really think. I mean, I personally have bought a house with no job, so there are ways to do it, but you've just got to be gutsy, and you've got to, want to do this and you got to take the gamble in doing it. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to buy a house, and which are legal. I mean, adjustable mortgage rate, because that it's easier to qualify for that because the interest rate's lower, and then refinance and get a fixed interest rate. But people are afraid of that. They're afraid of going in debt. But like you said, Smitty, there's good debt and there's bad debt. And anytime you're buying a piece of property, whatever you're going to use it for, flip, keep, or rent out as Airbnb, it's a good investment. But you got to do your homework. You don't want to buy a piece of property in a neighborhood that's what we call dying. You want to buy a piece of property that's in a neighborhood that's growing and the house is being undervalued. Those are the kind of things that you have to look for. And that goes back to what Smitty was saying as far as doing your homework, doing your research, having a plan. And I mean, that goes with anything that you're trying to do. Have a plan. I mean, you just don't get out there helter skelter and trying to hope this thing works for you. Have a plan, because there's so many people that have done this successfully. It's easy. There's a ton of books out here, that'll walk you through the whole process. Nothing that you have to really create, but it's easier to do. But I think with a lot of other things, people put that fear factor into you, and they make you think that you have to fit this certain profile to be able to buy or purchase a home. No, actually, you don't. You actually don't. But it just takes a little research, a little effort, and a bunch of I want to do it kind of an attitude. What do you think, fellas?
Man, you spot on right there, because we have to fear and lack of confidence. You have to be confident in anything that you do. And heck, if God puts it in your heart that you have this vision, he's not checking your budget. He's checking your faith. That's what you do. Don't worry about, well, I don't have the money. You're concerned about the interest rates and all those things, George, that you lined up, because that all that is false evidence appearing real. Something, to make you think you can't do it. It's true, you all. You can buy real estate with no money out of your own pocket. So get over that mess about the credit score. Did I mention, do any of us mention anything about a credit score since the last 25 or 30 minutes we've been on here? Investors don't concern themselves with that. Neither should you. Okay? And we haven't even we're just touching the surface of this thing, because it goes so much deeper. And doing your homework, though, doing your due diligence. There's so many tools out here. Zillow, a lot of people go get their real estate license. You don't have to get that stuff, but it does give you access. All you got to do is befriend a broker. Take a broker to lunch. Man, they ain't getting paid every month. Some of them, haven't had lunch in a long time because they haven't sold nothing. All right, so they can help you. All right, I'm just being facetious there. To all my broker family out there, I know there's plenty of y'all making plenty of money, so don't throw rocks at me. But you know what I'm talking about. There's been some lean days in all of our lives as a broker. So anyway, though, but get a real estate agent on your team, because you got to have a team mindset about this business. George mentioned it earlier about getting the right contractors, getting people, title companies, getting real estate access to information, access to deal flow, and there's plenty of access to capital. Okay, look within your own to find that access, because there's a lot of hard money lenders out there and stuff, but you want to try and circulate that money within their own community. You feel me? Hopefully you're hearing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think,
I feel you.
I will always say that, owning property is the best and safest investment for me. I mean, that's, you hear us talk about, like I said, the stock market and other things like that. But here again, it's diversification. I would have never been able to build a portfolio that I currently have if it hadn't been for real estate. And then real estate was the first investments that I made, because of the fact that back in Detroit, it was easy. It was easy to do. I'm going to say it was easy because some of the things that we did to get property, it was easy. It was easy. I mean, so without going into details as to how we did it, but it was easy, So, but it just had to be gutsy, and you had to, you had to want to do it, and we wanted to do it, So, but it hasn't changed. The numbers have changed, but the numbers are in line with inflation and the dollars that are circulating today. $100,000 house back in the day was probably a $30,000 house. So it's relative, okay, but you can't let the numbers scare you. Okay?
Scare you.
You got to have the I want to do it kind of an attitude. And I think if you have that attitude, the things that follow, which is the research, the having the plan, kind of all go together. But that's where you start is I want to do this.
You know what, George, to that point, the system works no matter whether it's residential or commercial. Because we can take that same thing I just laid out. You don't need calculators for this, y'all. Ladies and gentlemen, all you do is add a zero to all those numbers I just mentioned, and now you just bought $1 million could be apartment property or a commercial property for $400,000. You had to put $250,000 into it, so now your cost basis is $650,000. And heck, you borrowed the money at $100,000, so now you got $750,000. And then you go ahead and do the same thing, wash, rinse, and repeat. Instead of making $20,000, you made $200,000. By the time you subtract that $750,000 from that $950 that we talked about a half hour ago, same thing. Now put this on steroids, and in our own communities, we can buy some of these strip centers. Some of them that complain of being abandoned. Okay, we have a lot of black entrepreneurs and people of color entrepreneurs that looking to lease space. Okay, we can take over some of those abandoned or half strip centers, turn them bad boys around. And I'm not going to get into all the other programs that are out there that even assist you, LISC, the list type programs or what have you. But the best thing is to buy it all cash, because now you can get it at a discount, just like we can do it in these houses and stuff, and do the same thing. Once you have that asset, banks come running. They want to do money because they'll loan you money on that property. So we can do the same thing. We're going to show you more about this in 2023. But I hope you're hearing us today about the opportunities that exist out there, male, female. I don't care what your gender is, what your color is, basically. But primarily for us, it's time out for us using the excuses that we can't. Hopefully, we just dispel a lot of the excuses, about that. So here I'm going to go and I'm passing on over to you, Paul. You can either make excuses or you can make money, but you can't do both.
Right. That's right. That's right, brother. You said that loud and clear, George. I like what you said about, the fact that you wasn't even working and got a house, and back to what Gary said about what you just said was that it was about God's grace. So I have a very neat closing for our schedule today that coincides right with what the both of you just capsulized, and it goes like this: when grace speaks, laws are irrelevant, protocols become useless, connections become useless, power becomes silent, hopelessness is deleted. So I'd say to my audience as well as my brothers, may grace speak on your behalf today, and may no human understand the reason behind your progress.
Amen. Hey, that's
Amen.
good. That's all good. That's all
Amen.
good.
How to wrap it up, baby.
There you
Look at
go.
here.
There you go.
For those of y'all didn't know, now
Now
you
you
Now
know.
know.
you know.
Peace.
Peace.
This is Dr. Paul Clemens with the Crotchety Old Men podcast. If you're interested in financial tools to build wealth, and you're interested in ways to maximize your health through holistic alternatives, then you are just the audience that we're looking for. Tune in each week, every Thursday, to the Crotchety Old Men podcast, where George Crumley, Gary Smith, and I offer you in-depth discussions on health and wealth. Subscribe to the Crotchety Old Men podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your favorite podcast.